Alrighty, well, that brings us to next up, where Apple2TS and Back to the Future in your browser. And it'll be our very own Chris Torrance, and he's going to demonstrate some of the exciting new features in his Apple II emulator.
Hi, and welcome to KansasFest 2025. I'm Chris Torrance. Today, I want to talk to you about my Apple2TS emulator. I've been working on this emulator for several years now, and each year I make some new updates and add new features as well as fix bugs. And so this year I wanted to tell you about what I've been working on over the past year. So let's get started. As you can see, I'm actually going to be doing my entire presentation using the Apple2TS emulator, and I'm actually doing this using a piece of software called K2, which was written by Robert Sheehan and released just a few months ago. This was actually written using the Plasma or Pleiades software by David Schmenk and is available out on GitHub. What is Apple2TS? So first of all, it's a Apple IIe emulator written in TypeScript and React, and it emulates either an unenhanced or an enhanced Apple IIe with up to 8 megabytes of RAM. It has a full debugger as well as support for multiple speeds, color options such as full color or black and white or green screen. It has a variety of built-in disk images, including Total Replay and a bunch of other cool titles. It supports a variety of file formats, including the common ones like DSK, DO, PO, WAS, as well as some of the hard drive formats like 2MG and HDV. It has support for saving and restoring the entire state of the emulator so you can come back at a later time. And then it has a variety of other features which I've listed at the bottom. It's actually deployed on GitHub pages, and you can see the URL there in the top. It's apple2ts.com. It's a client-side only application. It doesn't need any server backend. And it works on all major browsers on all platforms, including mobile as well as desktop. And then finally, it's deployable as a progressive web application in case you want to have a standalone app on your desktop to double click. What are some of the new features that I've added in the past year? It's actually been very productive, and I have to give a lot of credit to this to Lawrence Sanchez, who came onto the project about a year ago, I think perhaps after stumbling across my KansasFest talk. And he just added a ton of cool new features, starting with the first one there at the top, which was cloud access to Microsoft OneDrive, and then we extended that to Google Drive as well. He then also added support for downloading disk images from the Internet Archive, as well as saving them as favorites. And I'll be demonstrating all of these features in just a little bit. And then finally, he also worked on doing a hot reload of disk images. And this is something that Quinn Dunkey had asked about last year at KansasFest. And so now I can finally report that we have successfully implemented that. We've also added support for a scripting language called Expect, which lets you control the emulator from a programmatic point of view. We've added support for themes, and then finally we've added a slew of other features, including scan lines, the Video 7 card display modes. There's a guided tour now that walks you through the application, and there's been a lot of bug fixes, the most important of which is supporting a lot more copy-protected disks. Let's jump into some of these features. First of all, here is the emulator itself, and you can see there's a variety of buttons along the bottom that control either the current state of the emulator or preferences. If you want to know more about what these do, you can actually try our guided tour, and if you select that, it will just walk you through the different buttons and what they do, and then you can click on them and try them out at your leisure. At the top of the toolbar is a variety of buttons, including things like boot or reset, as well as saving and restoring the state. And then on the bottom are controls for things like the different colors. Let's take a look now at the new themes. So we have 3 themes. This is the classic. We also have a dark theme. And if we switch over to that, you can see it's now dark mode. And then finally, we have a new minimal theme. And this is very useful, especially if you're on mobile devices where you don't have a lot of real estate. So you can see all the controls have been collapsed and they're just on these little hot buttons in the corners. And you just click on those and it will expand or contract the UI as necessary. Let's go back now to the main emulator and we'll take a look at the support for new color modes. First of all, let's take a look at the scan lines. Let me bring up Total Replay. I'll click on the Load Disk Images button. This is a palette of all the available disk images that we are shipping. And we'll just click on Total Replay. And then if I go under the color menu here, you can see I can do a variety of different colors, as well as amber, black and white, or I can even do black and white inverse. And then finally, let's go back to color and I'll turn on scan lines. And you can see now we have scan lines that are going through the entire image. And this will work no matter which color mode you're in. And it'll also work for text as well. So that's a new feature. And I mentioned that we have support for the Video 7 card, and this was a somewhat esoteric video card that came out in the 80s that lets you do a lot of different both low-res, high-res, and colored text modes on the Apple II. And unfortunately, it wasn't that popular, and so there wasn't a lot of software written to use it, although the Dazzle Draw program actually supports one of the modes. Interestingly, the Video 7 modes are also supported by the A2DVI card, which is a new card that came out from Raleigh Palaviv and Torsten Brem. And that actually plugs into your Apple II, 2 Plus, or 2E. It has HDMI or VGA output, and it also supports these interesting Video 7 modes. The next feature I want to talk about is actually the hot reload. So to do that, let me actually load my presentation back up. So I'm going to load from a local disk and I'll pick my presentation and I'll start it up again by typing plus K2 KFest 2025. That's the name of it. And then once it starts, I'm just going to go ahead and advance a couple of slides here. And when I was putting this together, I noticed that I had forgotten to include support for binary images in my list of file formats. So if I just switch over to this other tab, I actually have the K2 software loaded up here in edit mode. And so this is the editor that comes with Plasma or Pleiades. And I'm just going to add in bin, and I want it to be lowercase. So let me turn off all uppercase and delete that. Okay, and then I'm going to hit escape to get into command mode, and I'm going to hit the W key for write. But what you'll notice is this is actually going to save it to a disk in my local file system. My other tab over here has the exact same disk loaded. There's a special feature here called hot reload, and so I have to enable that because it's a little expensive to keep checking your local file system for disk changes. But once I've done that, if I go back over here and I just hit W for write, you can see it turns red there, meaning there's changes, and then it's going to turn white again. And then if we go back over here, you can see that it automatically reloaded the application. This is a feature that Quinn Dunkey asked for last year. In her use case, she was working on an Apple II game and she wanted to be able to compile the assembly code on her desktop and then have it automatically get loaded into an Apple II emulator so that she could instantly see the changes. So you can imagine if this is my game here and I just go over to, say, a terminal, here I'm just going to do a touch on the file, but you can imagine this would be the same thing as just compiling the code. And as soon as I do that, you can see that the emulator notices that the file on the local system has changed and then instantly reboots. Let's talk about some of the other fun features that have been added over the past year. So I mentioned that we have support now for storing disk images in the cloud. And if I load a disk, say, from my local file system, and here I'm going to load the alpha version of Skull Island. And if you haven't heard of it, Skull Island is actually a new game from 8-Bit Shack. This is an alpha version that I got from Dan Henderson. And so if you're curious about this game, just head over to 8bitshack.net. This game is actually written in double low res. And if you can hear that, it has support for the Mockingbird, music. And so this is using the Mockingbird card in my emulator. And so we can just actually start a new game here. And I haven't gotten very far into this. I better start as a galley rat. Am I a man or a mouse? Well, guess I'm a mouse. And so we can just do various things, and we can set sail and see where we're going to go, etc. All right, I just hit M to turn off the music. So let's say that we've been playing this for a while and we want to save it to the cloud because we want to be able to access it from another computer. What we can do is click on the disk here and we can say save to either OneDrive or Google Drive. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. You might have to enter your credentials for either OneDrive or Google Drive, but you can see here I am in my Google Drive, and I'll just select the top level folder here and I'll save it. And so now let's just reload the page. So we've emptied out the disk here. I'll go back and I'll just say load disk from OneDrive. And you can see here's all the disks. So here's my presentation that I was working on. Here's Skull Island. I click on that. I'll just say select, and it's going to download it from OneDrive and start the game up again. And then if I make changes to this, so let's say for example, I'm going to go in, I'll say yes, and let me turn up the music here, and we're going to do new game, and we'll start as a galley rat again, and I'll say I'm a man, and let's say, what's my status here? Okay, good, excellent. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and save the game. Okay, so it says saving, and you can see it's red indicating there's changes. But then because this is actually saved out on OneDrive, you can see it's actually synced, and it tells you the time that it was synced. And in fact, if I click on this, it'll tell you to sync, it'll ask you whether you want to sync every minute or every 5 minutes or don't sync at all. And then in fact, you can actually just do sync now. And what it'll do is it'll actually update the disk image out on the cloud. And so you can just have it do this automatically. And so you're always in sync. And Google Drive works essentially the same way. I talked about OneDrive, I talked about Google Drive. Well, what about the Internet Archive? Let me start over again, and I'll just click on the disk, and I'll just say load disk from Internet Archive. This comes up with a dialog which lets you search the entire Internet Archive for any software title. We've also curated some special collections. So you can see, for example, we have the software library for the Apple, game library, we've got Apple Educational, and then finally we have the 4am collection. So if you just click on one of these, it'll just take you to a subset showing just the disk images that are in that collection. And then when you find a disk image, there's a couple different things you can do. You can actually favorite it, and that's this little star here, and you can see I've already favorited Muppetville. But we can also just click on one of these and have it just load up. So for example, let's say if we wanted to play Plasmania, we click on that, it's going to download it from the archive, and then just start it up in the emulator.
Serious presents Plasmania.
Okay, and then if I really like this game, I can just click on it, and I can just say add disk to collection. Now, how do we get to the collection? If we just go back to our choose disk image dialog, you can see we actually have 3 tabs up here. So the first one is the built-in ones that are just shipped with the emulator. The second one are new releases. These are not shipped with the emulator. We actually just go out and download these on the fly. So for example, if you wanted to play the new Glider game by Colin Leroy Myra, you could actually just click on this. It would download it from its URL and then just start it up. And it just came out a few months ago, and he actually wrote this when he was learning how to program in Apple II high-res graphics so that he could write a clone of the Shuffle Puck game from the Mac. And it's actually a really cool game, and I'm kind of really getting into it. So I would strongly urge you, if you've either never played it on the Mac or you just want to give it a try, go out to the emulator and try out Glider. If you click on the Favorites tab, it'll show you all the software titles that you saved from either the Internet Archive or from Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive. And then if you click on these, it'll just load them up. If you no longer want it to be saved, you can actually just click the star to remove it. Some other fun features that I really didn't get a chance to talk about. So we have support for serial ports, and so you can either print to a built-in image writer, or you can actually hook up your own image writer to your desktop PC or Mac and actually print directly from the emulator to a real image writer. We have support for MIDI, and so you can hook up a real MIDI device like a keyboard synthesizer and actually play music from the emulator out to that. And then finally, we have support for parameters in the URL. So you can see here, I'm just going to Apple2TS.com, but we can actually do things like turn on the debugger. We can load a particular game, for example. And to do this, all you do is add little parameters onto the end of the URL. So for example, if I just wanted to fire up this one, here I'm loading Apple2TS, I'm telling it to make the color white, I'm telling it to make the speed fast, and then I'm giving it a URL. Some other things you can do, you can actually embed AppleSoft programs directly in the URL. And so here we've actually changed the color to green, and we've just done a very simple AppleSoft basic program. These could be as long as you want, as long as it's not longer than the maximum URL. And then finally, because it's a basic program that's running, you can see here in the help on the right-hand side, we've actually shown just some examples of how to use AppleSoft Basic. Another thing we can do, you can load a binary file. And so here I've loaded a binary file from a URL, and then I've told it the actual binary address at which to load it. And you can actually drag and drop a binary file onto the emulator, and then if you do that, you'll get a dialog asking you what address do you want to load the binary file at. We now have the ability to load particular games from within Total Replay just by embedding them in the URL. And so you can see here I'm telling it to load Choplifter. And one other feature I wanted to point out is we have full support for gamepads. So if you hook up a gamepad to your desktop or your mobile device, it'll support any of the standard, Xbox, PlayStation, generic controllers as well. And you can just play whatever your favorite game is, and yeah, it works great. There's a lot of other features. I didn't really even get into the debugger at all, so I strongly urge you to play around with that. So for example, here we can pause the program, and so now we're in assembly. We can actually step through as we're going, and then you can do things like see what the memory map looks like. You can actually modify memory on the fly. If I load a program with graphics and then I pause the emulator, we can go over to the memory editor here, and we can actually switch to this high-res graphics mode. And when we do that, a special magnifying glass comes up, and this actually lets you look at the pixels on the screen in a highly magnified view. If you click there, then it actually takes you to that region of the screen, and you can actually modify the pixel values on the fly if you want. You can add breakpoints, and so we have regular breakpoints where you can have an expression perhaps, so only stop if the on a certain address if the accumulator is greater than a certain value, or it's been hit a number of times, and then depending on, you can select a different memory bank. We have watch points, so if you want to choose a particular address to look at to see when does the value change. And then we also have built-in support for all of the standard soft switch addresses. And then finally, we have instruction breakpoints. So we can say if you ever encounter a branch carry clear, and it is, say, some sort of special addressing mode. So for example, one of the AND modes here, then stop when it hits that instruction. There's a lot more features. I didn't talk about time travel at all, so you can stop the emulator and you can go back in time. So if you're playing your favorite game and you've accidentally killed one of the hostages in Choplifter, you can just go back and pretend like it never happened. There is the scripting language, which I briefly mentioned, and which just looks like JSON, but you just put in a variety of commands and text to look for on the screen, and then you can control the emulator that way. There's a whole host of other features, and I just urge you to go and try them all out. So what am I working on next, or what are the other GitHub contributors working on? I have a bug where the emulator will occasionally drop keyboard characters if you type too fast, especially if you're in one of the super speed modes, like on ludicrous speed, for example. If anybody else wants to work on that, that'd be great. I'm hoping to add a way to assign particular cards to different slots. Right now it's all hard-coded. You get the Mockingboard in slot 4, for example, and that's it. It'd be fun to add a built-in code editor for Applesoft using this panel over on the right here to do something like that. There's a project that Lawrence Sanchez has been working on, and I'm anxious to see that. And then finally, we welcome ideas from the community. So I have a GitHub, and you're welcome to go over there and either log issues or bugs or feature requests, or join in the fun and help us extend the emulator even further. Special thanks to Lawrence Sanchez and Michael Morrison, as well as Univta0001 for lots of contributions over the past year, as well as a variety of others, including Colin Leroy, Jawad Bazyar, John Conrad, and many more. Thanks for watching, and let me know if there's any questions either here at KansasFest or in the Discord, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, feel free to add a comment below. Thanks for watching.
Awesome, Chris. I like the debugger. That's my favorite feature. I'm going to try that. So,
Excellent.
So yeah, I think we had a lot of questions here. With Discord was really hopping when you were doing that. So Michael asked for hot reloading, do you reset the entire drive state?
Yes. So whenever the emulator gets reloaded like that, it resets everything. So all the memory, all the soft switches, the hard drive, all the disk drives, and everything gets completely reset. Yeah.
Okay. Rob K, do you have any info on Video 7 mode? Are there any other software that uses that mode beside K2?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. There are very few software titles that use it. So I mentioned Dazzle Draw. That's one that I know of that had an optional Video 7 mode. I think there's a couple others that I stumbled across. To be honest, the one that I used the most was actually just the demonstration disc that came with the Video 7 card. And that had a way to test all of the different modes. And it's actually really confusing because the Video 7 company came out with their card. I think Apple came out with one. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like the RGB something. Yeah. And they're all slightly different. So some of them supported some of the modes, other ones did not support all the modes, and the demo discs are slightly different. So it's a little bit of a mess. And the fact that, not very many software titles used it made it wasn't really adopted, but it is fun to play with, and it sure makes great presentation software.
And the card's hard to find too.
Yep.
So Melody asked, how do you get the rewind to work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, I could really use some help with that too. I think I basically just save off essentially the entire state of the emulator. So the memory plus the drives, and it's not really configurable right now. So I think I'm saving it off like, I don't know, I forget, like 10 times a second or something like that. And so we only save, a limited amount of time, or maybe it's actually in keystrokes. I think that's what I changed to. So every time you hit a key, then it saves a new state. But you can imagine if you have a 32 megabyte hard drive image, like Total Replay, that uses up a lot of memory really fast. And so I'd love to change it to maybe use some sort of incremental update. So only save like the memory addresses that have changed, or if the disk hasn't really changed. I haven't played around with that too much. So, but anyway, yeah, that's what it does, is it just saves the whole state up to like a buffer of like 64 states, and then it just throws away the old ones.
That's interesting. So Ron asked, how long have you been working on this emulator, Chris?
I think it's been about 3 years now. And literally it did start just as a way to teach myself TypeScript. And so I just I wanted to learn that. And so I just kind of started off just doing that, and just it's grown from there.
This is an interesting one from Mike. Not really a question, but I wonder if you could make it run as a VS Code extension and integrate, compile, CC65, etc., to run directly.
Yep.
Create an image into the tool.
Yeah, Mike, that interesting you say that, because there's actually a GitHub issue out on the emulator for somebody asking for exactly this. And I think you could do that. I mean, it's not really my focus. And like I said, on GitHub, I actually, at my day job, we have a VS Code extension for our own language. And so I'm familiar with how to write a VS Code extension and to do that. But I think it would kind of distract, maybe at least distract me from the purpose of doing the emulator in the browser. And so I probably won't do that anytime soon, but I'm open to pull requests and contributions.
Do you still use Vite, Eric, from Eric?
Yeah. Vite or Vite is it's kind of a build tool that you use for JavaScript or TypeScript code. And the one I started out using was Create React App, which is actually a tool from Facebook. And I switched away from that a couple of years ago just because it was no longer supported. So Vite serves the same purpose. It builds all your application and it kind of handles all the backend stuff. And the short answer is yes, I'm still using that. It seems to still be working well.
Dan, Chris, do you have any plans to emulate other models, Apple IIc, 2 Plus, etc.?
Yeah. So actually, when I first wrote the emulator, I started out doing the 2 Plus because that was just easier to emulate. There just wasn't as much complexity. I didn't have to worry about like double high res or anything. But then I quickly moved it away towards the 2 Plus or the 2E. I might go back and do the 2 Plus just because that's kind of the computer I had as a kid. So it's kind of the one that I'm most attached to. I don't know if I really want to get into the very subtle differences between the platforms. And so, for example, like the 2C, there are some subtle differences, especially with the ROM and everything. I don't know if that's something that I'm really that interested in. So I think the short answer is I might do one, but probably not all of them. And I'm not planning on doing the 2GS at all, no matter how many times it's asked.
Somebody else can do that.
Yes.
So Eric asked, would it make sense to integrate the emulator with AI?
Eric, yes. I've been thinking about that. I think theoretically there's some things you could do with AI that would be really interesting. I haven't thought much more than, wow, that would be cool. But you can imagine, I don't know, having it some built-in way to, ask it to write AppleSoft Basic programs for you, or maybe have some way for it to play a game or something like that. Like they have those things where you can teach AI to, play some sort of Pac-Man or something like that. So maybe in the future, it would be a fun area to explore.
Vibe coding in the emulator.
Yeah.
I think we're out of questions, Chris. So thank you so much. And I'm sure there's probably be some more in the Discord afterwards that people think of after. So
great.
See you over in the Discord.